Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Doorbell. Garrett Reed stood motionless at his front door, staring at the young woman on his porch. Her auburn hair, so like her mother's, was pulled back in a severe ponytail, and her eyes, his eyes, were rimmed red. 3 years. It had been 3 years since he'd seen his daughter in person. 3 years since she'd sent that text, "I hate you." For a moment, all he could do was breathe, forcing air into lungs that had forgotten how. The cardboard box in her arms seemed to weigh her down both physically and emotionally. "Leah," he finally managed. His voice sounded foreign to his own ears. "Dad." Her reply was barely audible. Can I come in?" Garrett stepped aside, his movements mechanical. His spacious home in Ridgewood Heights felt suddenly claustrophobic. The house had been part of his image rehabilitation after the divorce, a statement to the community that Garrett Reed couldn't be destroyed, not by Marlene, not by anyone. Leah stood awkwardly in the foyer, clutching the box like a shield. "I found this in Mom's closet." Her voice broke. Garrett's face remained impassive. Years of controlling his emotions in the corporate battlefield had served him well in his personal life too, especially after Marlene's betrayal. He'd learned that showing weakness was inviting attack. "What is it?" he asked, not reaching for the box. "Everything. Every card, every letter, every gift you sent me." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "She kept them all. She told me you never tried to contact me after the divorce." The rage that had been Garrett's constant companion for 3 years flared hot inside him, but his expression didn't change. He'd suspected as much, but confirmation still felt like a knife between his ribs. "Mom was wrong," Leah continued, her voice stronger now. "About so many things." Garrett finally took the box, his hands steady despite the storm inside him. He opened it, revealing dozens of birthday cards, Christmas presents, notes, and letters, all unopened. All addressed to Leah in his precise handwriting. 3 years of attempts to reach his daughter, intercepted and hidden away. For the first time in years, Garrett felt moisture gathering in his eyes. He blinked it away quickly. Weakness wasn't an option. Not anymore. "There's more," Leah said quietly. "Things I found out about Mom and Russell. Russell Harmon." Even thinking the name made Garrett's jaw clench. His former business partner. His daughter's stepfather. The man who'd helped destroy his marriage and steal his child. "Come into the living room," Garrett said, his voice returning to its usual controlled bass. "We have a lot to talk about." As he led his daughter deeper into the house, Garrett's mind raced. 3 years of careful planning, of silent, methodical preparation for the day he would obliterate those who had wronged him. It was all coming to fruition. And now, unexpectedly, his daughter had returned, another piece slotting into place in his grand design. Garrett had always believed that revenge, like good whiskey, improved with time. He'd waited patiently, accumulating power and resources while Marlene and Russell built their perfect life on the ruins of his. They'd taken everything from him once. They wouldn't get a second chance. And he would never, ever forgive. Chapter 2. The Golden Years. 10 years earlier. To Reed Innovation's newest client. Garrett raised his glass, his smile genuine and unfettered by the cynicism that would later define him. Around the elegantly set dining table, glasses clinked as Russell Harmon and the other executives joined the toast. Marlene beamed at her husband from across the table, her beauty enhanced by the warm candlelight. At 35, she was still turning heads with her auburn hair and quick wit that had first captured Garrett's attention at Northwestern University 15 years earlier. "Honey, you're going to rule the tech world at this rate," she said, pride evident in her voice. "Not without my secret weapon," Garrett replied, nodding toward Russell. This guy landed the Peterson account when everyone said it couldn't be done. Russell smiled modestly, though his eyes glinted with ambition. "Just doing my job, boss." The evening continued with easy laughter and flowing conversation. 8-year-old Leah had been allowed to stay up late for the first part of the celebration, charming the corporate guests with her precocious intelligence before being tucked into bed. This was the golden age of Garrett Reed's life. His software security company was growing exponentially, his marriage was solid, and his daughter was the light of his life. From humble beginnings in a Pennsylvania steel town, Garrett had built himself into a success story, driven by a relentless work ethic and natural business acumen. What no one at the table could see that night was how the success would breed resentment, how prosperity would water the seeds of betrayal. Later that night, as Garrett and Marlene prepared for bed, she wrapped her arms around him from behind. "I'm so proud of you," she murmured against his back. Garrett turned in her embrace. "We built this together, March. Everything I do for you and Leah." "I know." Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes, but Garrett was too content to notice. "But sometimes I wonder if we're losing something with all this success." "What do you mean?" She shrugged. "You work such long hours. Leah misses you." "I miss you." "It's temporary," he assured her. 2 more years of building the client base, and then I can step back, delegate more." Marlene nodded, but something had shifted in her expression. "Russell mentioned he's hiring a new marketing director. Someone who can take some of the pressure off both of you." "Yeah, Abigail Howard. She comes highly recommended." "That's good," Marlene said distantly. "Maybe that means you'll be home more." But increased success only meant increased demands. The following years saw Reed Innovations expand rapidly, with Garrett and Russell traveling frequently. Abigail Howard proved to be an excellent hire, bringing in new clients and innovative marketing strategies. The 3 of them, Garrett, Russell, and Abigail, became an unbeatable team, while Marlene grew increasingly distant. What Garrett didn't see was how Marlene began confiding in Russell during company events. He missed the lingering glances, the accidental touches, the private jokes. He was blind to the growing intimacy between his wife and his business partner, too focused on building an empire to notice its foundations crumbling. By the time Leah turned 11, the cracks in the Reed marriage were becoming impossible to ignore. Marlene had developed new interests that conveniently excluded Garrett. She joined a book club that met on the evenings he was home, took tennis lessons at times when he could have joined her, planned girls' weekends with increasing frequency. "Is everything okay between us?" Garrett finally asked one night. "Of course," Marlene answered too quickly. "Why wouldn't it be? You seem elsewhere lately." She sighed, setting down her wine glass. "Maybe I am. Maybe I'm tired of being a corporate wife whose husband is married to his company." "That's not fair, Marlene. Everything I've built for us." "No," she said, her voice hardening. "You built it for yourself, Garrett, because you never could stand being ordinary." The words stung because they contained a kernel of truth. Growing up poor had left its mark on Garrett, instilling in him a hunger for success that sometimes overshadowed everything else. But what he didn't know then, what would only become clear later, was that Marlene's accusations were a convenient cover for her own betrayal already in progress. Chapter 3. The Betrayal. The annual Reed Innovations Christmas party had always been an extravagant affair, but as the company approached its 10th year, Garrett had pulled out all the stops. The event took place at the Lakeside Manor, with ice sculptures, a live orchestra, and enough gourmet food and premium liquor to keep the 300 guests satiated. Abigail Howard approached Garrett as he surveyed the celebration from a quiet corner. "Hiding from your own party?" she asked, handing him a fresh scotch. Garrett smiled at his marketing director. At 40, Abigail was striking rather than conventionally beautiful, with sharp intelligence behind her gray eyes and a no-nonsense attitude that had served the company well. "Just taking a moment to appreciate it all," he replied. "Hard to believe how far we've come." "You should be proud," she said. "Though I'm surprised Marlene isn't by your side for your big moment." Garrett scanned the room, realizing he hadn't seen his wife for at least half an hour. She was talking to the Peterson wives earlier. "Actually," Abigail said carefully, "I saw her stepping out onto the terrace about 20 minutes ago. Russell was with her." Something in Abigail's tone made Garrett's stomach tighten. "I'll go find them." "Excuse me." The December air bit through his tuxedo as Garrett stepped onto the deserted terrace. It appeared empty at first glance, but a movement in the shadows of the garden below caught his eye. He moved to the balustrade, looking down into the dimly lit landscaping. There, partially concealed by an ornamental pine, stood Russell and Marlene. They weren't just talking. Russell's hand cupped Marlene's face, his thumb stroking her cheek in an unmistakably intimate gesture. As Garrett watched, frozen in shock, his wife lifted her face to his business partner's, their lips meeting in a kiss that spoke of long familiarity. The sight hit Garrett like a physical blow. His mind rebelled against the evidence before his eyes, scrambling for alternative explanations even as the truth crystallized with brutal clarity. Every late meeting, every weekend conference, every book club night, they stretched before him now in a damning pattern. His first impulse was to confront them immediately, to leap down and tear them apart with his bare hands. But some deeper instinct held him back. The predatory part of his brain, the part that had helped him outmaneuver competitors for years, asserted control. Information was power. Reaction without planning was weakness. Silently, Garrett retreated from the terrace. He found Abigail inside. "How long have you known?" he asked, his voice deadly quiet. She met his gaze unflinchingly. "I suspected for months. I knew for certain 3 weeks ago when I saw them leaving the airport Marriott together. And you didn't tell me." "I needed to be sure," she replied. "And I needed evidence that would stand up in court." Garrett stared at her. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I have photographs, hotel receipts, text message records. I'm saying I've been gathering information to protect you because I suspected this day would come." "Why would you do that for me?" Abigail's expression softened slightly. "Because you deserve to know the truth. And because Reed Innovations can't afford to have its 2 top executives tearing each other apart without preparation." Garrett nodded slowly, a cold clarity washing over him. "Thank you." That night, he didn't confront Marlene. He didn't let on that his world had just imploded. Instead, he lay awake beside her, listening to her breathing and plotting his response with methodical precision. Over the next 3 months, Garrett became the consummate actor. He maintained the appearance of normalcy while working with a ruthless divorce attorney behind the scenes. He secured Abigail's evidence, consulted financial advisors about protecting his assets, and made strategic business moves to minimize Russell's influence in the company. He also spent more time with 13-year-old Leah, knowing that the coming storm would devastate her. Their weekend museum trips and science fair projects became precious memories he stored away, armor against what was to come. When Garrett finally confronted Marlene, it was with the calm of a predator that had its prey cornered. "I know about you and Russell," he said simply one evening after Leah had gone to bed. Marlene's face went white, then red. "Garrett, I can explain." "How long?" She swallowed hard. 2 years. The duration struck him like a physical blow, but he kept his expression neutral. "I've already spoken to my lawyer. You'll be receiving divorce papers tomorrow." "Garrett, please, we can work through this." "No," he said, his voice flat. "We can't." "What about Leah?" Marlene asked, desperation creeping into her voice. "I'll be seeking full custody." Marlene's expression hardened. "You won't get it. You're never home. You're married to that company. And you're sleeping with my business partner," Garrett replied coldly. "Let's see which one the judge finds more damaging to a child's welfare." What followed was a divorce that quickly turned vicious. Marlene, realizing she couldn't win on the infidelity front, switched tactics. She began a campaign to paint Garrett as an emotionally absent workaholic who had driven her into another man's arms. She leveraged her community connections, spun sympathetic narratives to mutual friends, and, most devastatingly, began poisoning Leah against her father. Despite the evidence Garrett presented, the family court judge awarded joint custody, swayed by Marlene's tearful performance and Leah's obviously conflicted feelings. It was the first true defeat Garrett had suffered in years, and it awakened something dark and implacable within him. As he watched Marlene drive away with his daughter after the hearing, Russell waiting in the parking lot to console her, Garrett made a silent vow. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. They had taken his trust, his family, and pieces of his company. But they had made a fatal error. They had left him alive to respond. And Garrett Reed's response would be the stuff of nightmares. Chapter 4. The Custody Wars. 2 months after the divorce was finalized, Garrett sat in his attorney's office, reviewing the latest motion filed by Marlene's legal team. "She wants to reduce your visitation hours?" he asked, his voice dangerously controlled. Barry Simmons, the silver-haired divorce attorney who'd represented Garrett through the proceedings, nodded grimly. "Claims Leah is experiencing emotional distress during transitions between households." "That's bullshit. Leah's fine when she's with me." Garrett stood and paced to the window. "This is Marlene manipulating her, coaching her." "Possibly," Barry agreed. "But family courts take children's expressed preferences seriously, especially as they approach their teen years. Leah's 14. She's impressionable. She's being fed lies about me every day she spends with them." Garrett's fist clenched involuntarily. "Russell moved in with them last week. Did you know that?" The ink is barely dry on our divorce papers. Barry sighed. It doesn't look good, but it's not illegal. And unfortunately, it gives Marlene's household the appearance of stability, 2 parental figures instead of 1. Garrett turned, his expression glacial. I want a psychological evaluation ordered for Leah. I want an investigation into parental alienation. I want every legal maneuver available to expose what they're doing. That will be expensive, Garrett. And messy. It could make things worse with Leah if she feels you're attacking her mother. I don't care what it costs, Garrett replied. My daughter is all that matters. The custody battle that ensued over the next year became notorious in county legal circles. Garrett spared no expense, hiring child psychologists, private investigators, and parenting coaches. He documented every canceled visit, every negative comment Leah made about her mother's household, every time Russell overstepped his boundaries as a step-parent. But Marlene fought back with equal ferocity. She enrolled Leah in therapy with a counselor who seemed suspiciously predisposed to find fault with Garrett's parenting. She documented his work schedule, his traveling, his late hours. She painted a picture of an obsessive businessman who saw his daughter as another possession to be controlled. The worst blow came when Russell leveraged his position at Reed Innovations to portray himself as a stabilizing influence in Leah's life. Several employees, hoping to curry favor with the company's second-in-command, provided statements about Garrett's demanding management style and explosive temper. He's using my own company against me, Garrett told Abigail during a late night at the office. Then take the company away from him, she replied simply. Garrett looked up sharply. What do you mean? I mean, Russell's been cutting corners for years. The Peterson security implementation? He outsourced key components to an overseas developer to save money, putting their data at risk. The Miller contract? He promised features we hadn't even developed yet. You have proof of this? Abigail smiled thinly. I keep thorough records, Garrett. Always have. The next board meeting became the corporate equivalent of a bloodbath. Armed with Abigail's meticulously documented evidence, Garrett systematically dismantled Russell's position in the company, exposing shortcuts, false promises to clients, and ethical breaches that violated their corporate governance policies. By meeting's end, Russell was not only removed from his position, but facing potential civil liability from misled clients. His golden parachute had been slashed to ribbons. That evening, Garrett received a furious call from Marlene. You bastard, she hissed. You couldn't stand to see us happy, could you? This has nothing to do with you, Garrett replied calmly. Russell compromised our company's integrity. The board responded accordingly. Bullshit. This is revenge, pure and simple. Think what you want, Marlene. But perhaps you should ask yourself what else he's been lying about. The call ended with Marlene's enraged scream, but Garrett felt no satisfaction. Taking Russell down professionally had been necessary, but it was only the first step. More importantly, it had done nothing to repair his relationship with Leah, which continued to deteriorate under Marlene's influence. By the time Leah turned 15, her visits with Garrett had become exercises in silent resentment. She answered his questions in monosyllables, refused his attempts to connect, and spent most of her mandated time with him texting friends or locked in her room. She hates coming here, Garrett confided to Abigail, who had become his closest confidant. Every time I pick her up, it's like I'm kidnapping her. She doesn't hate you, Abigail said. She's confused. Teenagers have black and white thinking, and Marlene has painted you as the villain. How do I fight that? You can't fight it directly. You can only be consistent, be present, and wait for Leah to see the truth for herself. But waiting had never been Garrett's strong suit. After another disastrous weekend visit where Leah had refused to join a family dinner with his parents, Garrett made a difficult decision. He filed for a modification of the custody agreement, requesting that Leah's preferences be formally considered by the court. The hearing was brief and devastating. Leah, now 15, tearfully told the judge she wanted to limit visits with her father to 1 weekend per month. He's always working, she said, her eyes downcast. And he's angry all the time. He says mean things about Mom and Russell. When asked for specific examples, Leah's responses were vague, clearly rehearsed talking points fed to her by Marlene. But the damage was done. The judge, noting Leah's age and apparent distress, modified the custody agreement to reduce Garrett's time with his daughter. Outside the courtroom, Marlene approached with a veneer of sympathy. You brought this on yourself, Garrett. If you just accepted our happiness instead of trying to destroy it. Walk away, Marlene, Garrett interrupted, his voice deadly quiet. Walk away while you still can. Russell stepped forward, placing a possessive hand on Marlene's lower back. Is that a threat, Garrett? Because I'd be happy to get a restraining order. Garrett looked at the man who had once been his trusted partner, taking in the designer suit bought with Reed Innovations money, the smug satisfaction in his eyes. Not a threat, Garrett replied coldly. A promise. This isn't over. As he watched them walk away with his daughter, something crystallized in Garrett's mind. The legal system had failed him. Conventional methods had failed him. It was time for unconventional solutions. That night, he called Vincent Blackwood, an old college friend who had contacts in both legal and less-than-legal circles. I need your help, Vince, Garrett said when the man answered. No questions asked. There was a pause before Vincent responded. I'm listening. Chapter 5, The Silent Years. Leah's 16th birthday came and went with Garrett's card and gift returned unopened. His phone calls went straight to voicemail. His texts received no response. The wall between them had become impenetrable, reinforced daily by Marlene and Russell's influence. But Garrett was far from inactive during this period of estrangement. With Vincent Blackwood's help, he began gathering information, not for another failed legal battle, but for something far more permanent. Russell's in trouble, Vincent reported during one of their meetings at a nondescript diner outside the city. After you forced him out of Reed Innovations, he tried to start his own security firm, but his reputation was too damaged. Now he's working as a sales director for Comtech Solutions, making about a third of what he used to. And Marlene, not happy about the lifestyle downgrade. They had to sell the house in Ridgewood Heights and move to an apartment in Westlake. She's been talking about going back to teaching, but so far it's just talk. Garrett nodded, absorbing the information. And Leah? Vincent's expression softened slightly. Struggling. Her grades have dropped. She's running with a new crowd, edgier kids. There have been a couple of parties broken up by police, though she wasn't detained. A pang of concern shot through Garrett. Is she in danger? Not immediately. But she's searching for something, stability, maybe. She's not finding it at home. What else? Vincent slid a folder across the table. Russell has some interesting habits. Gambling debts at River City Casino. A female client he meets at the airport Marriott twice a month. And some questionable investments that reek of desperation. Garrett opened the folder, scanning the surveillance photos, bank statements, and detailed reports. He's cheating on Marlene. Poetic justice, Vincent remarked. Not enough, Garrett replied, closing the folder. Not nearly enough. Over the next year, Garrett maintained this double life. To the outside world, he was the successful CEO of Reed Innovations, expanding the company internationally and developing groundbreaking new security protocols. He dated occasionally, sophisticated, independent women who asked few questions about his past and made fewer demands on his future. But his real focus remained on his elaborate plan for retribution. He purchased a storage unit under a shell company name, slowly filling it with items that would later prove crucial. He cultivated relationships with people in Marlene and Russell's orbit. Leah's school counselor, their apartment building manager, even the barista at the coffee shop Russell frequented. Most importantly, he began assembling what he called the Box of Truth, a comprehensive record of Marlene and Russell's betrayal, their manipulation of Leah, and their subsequent failures. Every lie, every manipulation, every broken promise was documented, dated, and preserved. Abigail, who had been promoted to COO of Reed Innovations, was the only person who knew the full extent of Garrett's obsession. This isn't healthy, she told him bluntly after finding him working late one night, meticulously organizing new additions to the box. You're letting them consume you. Not consuming, Garrett corrected. Focusing. There's a difference. Is there? You've built an amazing company. You could have another family if you wanted. Instead, you're pouring your energy into punishing people who aren't worth it. Garrett looked up, his eyes cold. They took my daughter from me, Abigail. They turned her against me with lies. What would you have me do? Forgive and forget? No, she said softly. But I'd have you live while you're waiting for your revenge. This, she gestured at the documents spread before him. This is just another form of letting them win. Her words struck home, though Garrett would never admit it. The next day, he established a college fund for Leah in a separate trust that couldn't be touched by Marlene or Russell. He also began quietly donating to organizations supporting Father's rights in custody battles. These actions didn't mean he'd abandoned his plan for revenge, far from it. But they represented an acknowledgement that his life couldn't be entirely defined by retribution. The true turning point came on a rainy Tuesday, when Garrett spotted Leah by chance at a downtown coffee shop. Now 17, she sat alone, her hair dyed black, her expression solemn as she sketched in a notebook. The impulse to approach her was nearly overwhelming, but Garrett held back, instead taking a seat at the counter where he could observe without being seen. What he witnessed over the next hour broke his heart. Leah was joined by Russell, whose body language screamed discomfort and impatience. Their conversation quickly devolved into an argument, with Russell checking his watch repeatedly and Leah becoming increasingly agitated. When she reached across the table, seemingly pleading for something, Russell grabbed her wrist hard enough to make her wince. It took every ounce of Garrett's self-control not to intervene. Only the knowledge that confronting Russell would likely push Leah further away kept him rooted to his seat. When Russell finally left, Leah remained, wiping away tears and returning to her sketchbook with grim determination. As she drew, her face took on an expression Garrett recognized from her childhood, intense concentration masking deep hurt. Before leaving, he arranged with the barista to pay for Leah's drinks for the remainder of the day, anonymously. It was a small gesture, insignificant in the grand scheme, but it was something tangible he could do for his daughter in that moment. That night, Garrett added new components to his plan. Russell's physical intimidation of Leah shifted something in him, transforming his cold, calculated revenge into something more urgent, more righteous. This was no longer just about his own wounds. It was about protecting Leah from people who would harm her. 2 weeks later, Garrett received the text that would mark the beginning of the end of his silent years. "I hate you. Don't contact me again." The message came after Leah's weekend visit to his home, a visit mandated by the custody agreement, but so filled with tension that barely a word had been exchanged between them. Something must have happened after she returned to Marlene's, some new lie or manipulation that pushed her to cut ties completely. Garrett didn't respond to the text. Instead, he continued sending birthday cards, Christmas gifts, graduation congratulations, all returned unopened, all added to his growing collection of evidence. And he waited, knowing that the truth had a way of surfacing, especially when someone was working tirelessly to bring it to light. Chapter 6. The Preparation. "You're sure about this?" Vincent asked, eyeing the elaborate flowchart that covered one wall of Garrett's home office. "Once we start, there's no going back." Garrett stood before the chart, hands clasped behind his back. Each branch represented a contingency, each connection a calculated action and reaction. 2 years of planning had culminated in this comprehensive blueprint for justice. "I'm sure," he replied. "Leah turns 18 next month. She'll be legally an adult, beyond Marlene's immediate control. That doesn't mean she'll suddenly start answering your calls." "I don't expect her to," Garrett said. "But it means the legal barriers between us will be gone. And it means the gloves can come off with Marlene and Russell." Vincent studied his friend's face. The two men had known each other since their freshman year of college, when they'd been assigned as roommates. Vincent, the privileged son of a federal judge, and Garrett, the scholarship student working 2 jobs to stay afloat. Their friendship had weathered decades, built on mutual respect and an understanding that both men operated by their own moral codes rather than society's conventions. "You've thought about the collateral damage?" Vincent asked. "Not just to them, but to you, to Leah?" "Every day for 3 years," Garrett answered. "That's why the plan is so specific. Surgical strikes, not carpet bombing." Vincent nodded slowly. "All right, let's go through it one more time." For the next 3 hours, they reviewed each phase of what Garrett had dubbed Operation Truth. It began with financial pressure, subtle at first, then increasingly severe. Russell's gambling debts would be purchased by a shell company Vincent controlled, then called in all at once. His mistress would receive evidence of other affairs, carefully doctored to appear more extensive than they actually were. Meanwhile, Marlene would find her social standing systematically dismantled. Anonymous tips to her former friends about disparaging remarks she'd supposedly made. Carefully leaked information about financial troubles that would see her dropped from charity boards and social committees. "The beauty is in the plausible deniability," Garrett explained. Each event could be bad luck, or someone else's vendetta, or just life's natural consequences catching up with them. And the box? Vincent asked. The centerpiece, Garrett confirmed. Every card and letter I sent Leah, every gift they kept from her. Evidence of every lie they told her about me. Photos of Russell with his mistress. Documentation of their financial mismanagement that's cost Leah her college fund. All organized chronologically, irrefutably. How will you get her to see it? Garrett's expression hardened. That's where your friend Lewis comes in. Lewis Crawford was an expert in what he euphemistically called data recovery and relocation. A high-end hacker whose services didn't come cheap. His role in the plan was to ensure that certain incriminating photos of Russell ended up on Marlene's laptop, where Leah would likely discover them while using the computer for schoolwork. The photos alone won't do it, Vincent cautioned. Teenagers find out adults are flawed all the time. They adapt. The photos are just the crack in the dam, Garrett explained. Once Leah starts questioning one aspect of their narrative, the rest will follow. She's smart, always has been. She just needs a reason to start looking closer. Vincent nodded slowly. And if she doesn't? She will, Garrett said with absolute certainty. Because despite everything, she's my daughter. Truth matters to her. The final preparations took another 2 weeks. Bank accounts were established, digital tracks were covered, alibis were constructed. Garrett even went so far as to schedule a business trip to Singapore that would place him thousands of miles away when the first phase began, not because he feared legal repercussions, but because he wanted no suspicion to fall on him until the moment of his choosing. The night before his departure, Garrett visited Leah's old room in his house. He'd kept it exactly as she'd left it 3 years earlier. Posters of bands she'd liked at 15, the astronomy books she'd collected, the telescope by the window. It was a shrine to the relationship they'd once had, and to the one he hoped to rebuild. From his pocket, he withdrew an old photograph, Leah at 10, sitting on his shoulders at a baseball game, both of them laughing. It had been taken by Marlene in those last good years, before everything fell apart. Garrett placed the photo on Leah's desk, a talisman for what was to come. Soon, he promised the empty room. The next day, he boarded a plane to Singapore, outwardly the picture of a successful CEO on a routine business trip. Only Vincent and Abigail knew that while Garrett attended meetings and negotiated contracts on the other side of the world, Operation Truth would begin unfolding back home with the precision of a Swiss watch. What none of them anticipated was how quickly the plan would accelerate once set in motion, or how Leah's own actions would transform its careful choreography into something far more unpredictable and powerful. Chapter 7. The Discovery. Leah Sullivan stood in her mother's walk-in closet, searching for a pair of boots she'd been promised she could borrow for her senior photography project. At almost 18, she developed a passionate interest in black and white photography, finding in its stark contrasts an echo of how she'd come to see the world. The closet was meticulously organized, one of her mother's few consistent traits, with shoes lined up by color and season along the back wall. As Leah pushed aside hanging clothes to reach the shoe rack, her hand dislodged a hat box from the top shelf. It fell with a solid thud, heavier than an empty box should be. Curious, she picked it up. Unlike her mother's other storage boxes, this one had no label. When she removed the lid, her breath caught. Inside were dozens of envelopes and small packages, all addressed to her in a handwriting she recognized immediately. Her father's precise, slanting script covered envelopes postmarked over the past 3 years. Birthdays, Christmases, graduations. All unopened. All hidden away. Leah sank to the closet floor, her hands trembling as she picked up the most recent envelope. A birthday card for her upcoming 18th birthday, dated 2 weeks earlier. The return address was her father's home, where she hadn't set foot in over a year. He's been writing all this time. The realization collided violently with what her mother and Russell had told her repeatedly, that her father had made minimal efforts to stay connected, that he'd chosen his company over her, that his occasional attempts at contact were performed out of obligation rather than love. With growing urgency, Leah began opening the envelopes, starting with the oldest. Each contained not just a card but a letter, sometimes pages long, detailing her father's life, asking questions about hers, expressing his love and his hope that someday they would reconnect. A package contained a delicate silver bracelet with a star charm, a reference to their stargazing nights when she was younger. Another held a first edition copy of her favorite childhood book. Each gift was thoughtful, personal, chosen with intimate knowledge of who she was. Tears streamed down Leah's face as she read letter after letter, the truth of the past 3 years rewriting itself in her mind. One passage from a Christmas letter struck her particularly hard. I drove by your school concert last night. I stood at the back, hoping for a glimpse of you playing your cello. The security guard asked me to leave when I couldn't produce a ticket. I explained you were my daughter, but without custody papers for that specific event, he couldn't let me stay. I sat in my car in the parking lot and imagined the music instead. Her mother had told her that her father hadn't even responded to the concert invitation. Hours passed as Leah pieced together this alternate history. Eventually, the sound of the garage door opening snapped her back to the present. Hastily, she gathered everything back into the box, but instead of returning it to the shelf, she clutched it to her chest and stepped out of the closet just as her mother entered the bedroom. Leah, what are you doing in here? Marlene asked, then froze when she saw the box. Why did you hide these from me? Leah demanded, her voice raw from crying. Marlene's face paled. Honey, it's complicated. No, it's not. You lied to me. For years, you told me he didn't care, that he was too busy for me. But he wrote every month. He sent gifts. He tried to come to my concert. Leah, you don't understand what your father is like. I think I'm starting to. Leah cut her off. He's not the one who's been lying to me. Russell appeared in the doorway behind Marlene, his expression shifting quickly from confusion to alarm when he spotted the box. What's going on? He asked, though his eyes said he already knew. Did you know about this? Leah demanded. Russell's hesitation was answer enough. How could you? Leah's voice broke. Both of you. How could you keep this from me? We were protecting you, Marlene insisted. Your father, he's vindictive, manipulative. After what he did to Russell at the company. That was business. Russell interjected quickly. It had nothing to do with you, Leah. But Leah saw something in their exchanged glances, a complicity that sent ice through her veins. More lies. Always more lies. I'm taking this, she said, holding the box tighter. These were meant for me. Leah, wait. Her mother began, reaching for her arm. Don't touch me. Leah jerked away. I need to think. I need to get out of here. She pushed past them, hurrying to her room where she threw some clothes into a backpack. The box of letters went in next, carefully nestled between layers of clothing. Her phone she left on the bed. She couldn't bear to hear their excuses, their justifications. The bus ride across town to her father's neighborhood felt surreal. Leah hadn't been to his house in over a year, not since she'd sent that horrible text. Words fed to her by Russell after he'd shown her fabricated emails suggesting her father was trying to sabotage her college applications to force her to work at his company. Another lie, she realized now, the pieces falling into place with sickening clarity. When she reached her father's street, doubt suddenly gripped her. What if he didn't want to see her? What if 3 years of rejection had hardened his heart against her? The thought made her steps falter as she approached the imposing house. But something drove her forward. Perhaps the weight of the truth in the backpack she carried. Perhaps the desperate need to reclaim those lost years. Her finger pressed the doorbell before she could reconsider. Long moments passed. Then the door opened, and her father stood before her, his expression transitioning from reflexive politeness to shock to a carefully guarded hope. Leah, he said, her name almost a question in his mouth. Dad. The word felt both foreign and familiar. Can I come in? He stepped aside wordlessly, and Leah entered the house she'd once called home. It smelled the same, sandalwood and coffee and the lemon polish her father insisted on for the wooden furniture. In the foyer, she unslung her backpack and carefully removed the box. I found this in Mom's closet. Her voice broke as she held it out to him. As her father opened the box and saw its contents, something shifted in his face, a crack in the composed exterior he always maintained. His hands, usually so steady, trembled slightly as he lifted one of the unopened cards. She kept them from you, he said, a statement rather than a question. All of them. She told me you never tried to contact me, that you were too busy with the company to care. Her father's eyes closed briefly, pain etching itself into the lines around them. When he opened them again, they glistened with unshed tears. Mom was wrong, Leah continued, her own eyes welling up again. About so many things. The dam broke then, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry for that text, for believing them, for... No. His voice was firm despite its roughness. You have nothing to apologize for, Leah. You were a child caught between adults who should have protected you from exactly this kind of pain. He set the box aside and, after a moment's hesitation, opened his arms. Leah stepped into his embrace, the familiar scent of his cologne unlocking memories she'd suppressed for years. For the first time in a very long time, she felt safe. What neither of them knew in that moment of reconciliation was that this was just the beginning, that the box of letters represented only a fraction of the truths about to be revealed. Chapter 8. The Confrontation. 3 days after Leah's arrival at his home, Garrett sat in his study reviewing contracts when the security system announced visitors at the gate. The camera feed showed Marlene's SUV, with both her and Russell inside. Block them was his first instinct, but he reconsidered. This confrontation was inevitable, perhaps better to have it on his terms, on his territory. Let them in, he instructed the system, then went to find Leah, who was in the kitchen making tea. Your mother and Russell are here, he said carefully, watching her expression. Leah's hands stilled on the kettle. The past days had been a careful rebuilding. Morning conversations over coffee, hesitant questions about the years they'd missed, cautious steps toward trust. He wouldn't force her into a confrontation she wasn't ready for. Do you want me to send them away? He asked. Leah took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders in a gesture so like his own that it made his heart ache. No, she decided. I need to hear what they have to say. Garrett nodded. I'll be right there with you. Actually, Leah said, meeting his eyes directly. I'd like to talk to them alone first. If that's okay. The request surprised him, but he respected the strength behind it. Of course. Use the living room. I'll be in my study if you need me. Moments later, the doorbell rang. Garrett answered it, his face an expressionless mask as he regarded the pair on his doorstep. Marlene had aged in the past 3 years, fine lines around her eyes and mouth that hadn't been there before. Russell looked worse, softer around the middle, a thinning hairline, the confident posture of the business executive replaced by something more hunched, more defensive. Garrett, Marlene began, her voice falsely bright. We've come for Leah. Leah isn't a child anymore, he replied coldly. She makes her own decisions about where she stays. She's still 17 for another week, Russell interjected. Legally, I can call the police and have you removed from my property, Garrett cut him off. But Leah has agreed to speak with you. She's in the living room. He stepped aside, allowing them to enter but making no move to lead them. Let them feel like the intruders they were. As they moved toward the living room, Garrett returned to his study, leaving the door ajar. He didn't intend to eavesdrop, but he wanted to be able to hear if Leah called for him. The conversation began civilly enough, Marlene's voice pleading, Russell's reasonable and concerned. But within minutes, the tone shifted. You had no right to take those letters. Marlene's voice rose sharply. Those were private. Private. Leah's incredulous response was clear even through the partially closed door. They were addressed to me. We were protecting you, Russell insisted. Your father. No. Leah's voice cracked like a whip. Don't you dare put this on him. You kept his letters from me. You lied about him not wanting to see me. You showed me fake emails about him trying to sabotage my college applications. A short silence followed this accusation. Leah, Marlene's voice had dropped, become cautious. What are you talking about? What fake emails? The ones Russell showed me last year, Leah replied. The ones that made me send that awful text to Dad. Another silence, longer this time. Russell. Marlene's voice now held a different note. Confusion, suspicion. I don't know what she's talking about, Russell said. But even from the study, Garrett could hear the defensive edge to his voice. Yes, you do, Leah insisted. You showed me emails from Dad to the admissions officer at Berkeley, saying I wasn't emotionally stable enough for college. You said he wanted me to work at his company where he could control me. You did what? Marlene's voice had gone dangerously quiet. The conversation devolved from there. Marlene demanding answers, Russell deflecting, Leah bringing up more inconsistencies she discovered in the narrative they'd fed her for years. Garrett remained in his study, a grim satisfaction building as he listened to the web of lies unraveling. He hadn't anticipated Russell's fabricated emails. That had been an independent cruelty, but it fit perfectly into the larger pattern of manipulation. The raised voices eventually culminated in the sound of the front door slamming. Moments later, Leah appeared in the study doorway, her face flushed but her eyes clear. "Mom left with Russell," she said. She didn't know about some of the things he did. The fake emails. The threats to my photography teacher about my independent study. Garrett nodded slowly. "Did you tell her about the box of letters?" "Yes." She tried to justify it at first. Said she was protecting me from false hopes because you'd always put your company first. Leah's voice broke slightly. "But when I showed her the letter about my concert, about you sitting in the parking lot, she couldn't look at me." "I'm sorry, Leah. I never wanted you to be hurt by any of this. I know that now." She hesitated, then asked, "Did you do something to Russell at the company? He kept saying you destroyed his career out of spite." Garrett considered his answer carefully. "Russell made professional decisions that put our clients at risk. The board removed him based on evidence of those decisions. Was I personally satisfied by that outcome? Yes, but it would have happened regardless of our personal conflict." Leah seemed to accept this, nodding slowly. "There's something else. Mom said. She said you've been planning something. That you never forgive people who cross you. That you're patient but ruthless." Garrett's expression remained neutral, though internally he reassessed the situation. Marlene knew him well enough to sense the planning behind recent events. She'd always been intuitive that way. "Your mother and I have very different perspectives on past events," he said carefully. "What matters now is your well-being, Leah. Nothing else." Later that evening, after Leah had gone to bed, Garrett received a text from Marlene. "We need to talk. Alone. Tomorrow. 2 p.m. at Riverside Park." He sent back a simple, "I'll be there." The meeting would accelerate his timeline, but in some ways, it might be cleaner this way, a direct confrontation rather than the slow dismantling he'd planned. Either way, the endgame remained the same. That night, Garrett opened the locked cabinet in his study and reviewed the contents of the real box of truth, the complete version, containing not just his letters to Leah, but everything else. Photos of Russell with his mistress, financial records showing how they'd squandered money meant for Leah's education, recordings of Marlene coaching Leah on what to say in family court. Tomorrow would determine which pieces of this evidence would be deployed and how. What he didn't expect was the phone call that came at midnight. Marlene, her voice thick with what might have been tears or alcohol or both. "It was Russell's idea," she said without preamble. "The letters. Keeping them from her. All of it. I just wanted to hurt you like you hurt me." "By neglecting you?" Garrett asked, keeping his voice low to avoid waking Leah. "By working too much. By being perfect." Marlene's voice cracked. "By never needing me. The company was your real wife, Garrett. I was just furniture. So you slept with my business partner. Took my daughter. Told her I didn't want her." His voice remained controlled, but ice had crept into it. "Seems disproportionate." "I know." The admission surprised him. "I know what we did was wrong. Especially to Leah. But Russell," he kept pushing for more. "The fake emails, the lies about you threatening her teachers. I didn't know about those. And you expect me to believe that. I don't expect anything from you anymore, Garrett. I know you're planning something. Something terrible. And whatever it is, Leah will be caught in the crossfire again." The manipulation was so transparent, it almost made him laugh. "Is that what tomorrow's meeting is about? Appealing to my concern for Leah, to save yourself?" "No." Her voice hardened. "Tomorrow's meeting is me giving you one chance to back off before I go to the police about the threats you've been making against Russell." "What threats?" he asked, genuinely surprised. "The ones he's been receiving for the past month. The ones that match your pattern exactly. Patient, detailed, ruthless." Garrett's mind raced. He'd made no threats. His plan had been much more subtle than that. But if Russell was receiving threats... "Interesting timing on Russell's problems," he said carefully. "Almost like he's creating a preemptive defense." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I'll see you tomorrow, Marlene. Sleep well." After ending the call, Garrett immediately contacted Vincent, who answered despite the late hour. "Someone's threatening Russell," Garrett said without greeting. "Not us. Could be a coincidence," Vincent suggested. "Nothing about this is coincidental. Find out what's happening." The pieces were still moving, realigning themselves into a pattern Garrett hadn't anticipated. But if there was one thing his years in business had taught him, it was how to adapt to changing circumstances. Tomorrow's confrontation would proceed, but with a new awareness that perhaps his wasn't the only plan in motion. Chapter 9. The Resolution. Riverside Park sprawled along the waterfront, a carefully maintained slice of nature within the urban landscape. Garrett arrived 15 minutes early, selecting a bench with clear sightlines in all directions. The spring afternoon was pleasant, cherry blossoms drifting on the gentle breeze, an incongruously peaceful setting for what was to come. He'd left Leah at home with Abigail, who had stopped by under the pretense of delivering contracts that needed signing. In reality, he wanted someone he trusted with his daughter while he dealt with Marlene. At precisely 2 p.m., Marlene appeared on the path, alone as requested. She dressed carefully in a cream-colored suit that reminded Garrett of their courthouse days, armor disguised as elegance. "Marlene," he greeted her with a nod as she took a seat beside him, maintaining a careful distance. "Thank you for coming," she began, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I wanted to talk to you about Leah. I assumed as much. She's confused right now, angry, but she still needs her mother." Garrett studied her profile, noting the tension in her jaw, the carefully applied makeup that couldn't quite conceal the signs of a sleepless night. "Leah is welcome to see you whenever she wants," he said. "I won't interfere with that relationship." Relief flickered across Marlene's face, quickly replaced by wariness. "And Russell? Those threats need to stop, Garrett. As I told you last night, I haven't threatened Russell." "Then who?" "That's the interesting question, isn't it?" Garrett interrupted. "Because while I've been monitoring both of you, I haven't taken any direct action. Yet." Color drained from Marlene's face. "You've been monitoring us? Did you really think I wouldn't? After what you did?" She swallowed hard. "What do you want, Garrett? To punish us for the rest of our lives? To make Leah choose between her parents?" "What I want," he said, his voice dropping to a dangerous register, "is justice. For 3 years, you and Russell systematically destroyed my relationship with my daughter. You hid my letters, fabricated evidence, poisoned her against me. Every day, I woke up knowing my child believed I had abandoned her. I never meant." "Intentions are irrelevant," he cut her off. "Results are what matter. And the result was my daughter's pain." Marlene fell silent, unable to counter this fundamental truth. After a moment, Garrett continued, his tone measured. "But recent events have forced me to reevaluate my approach." "What do you mean?" Instead of answering directly, Garrett removed his phone and pulled up a series of texts Vincent had sent earlier that morning, screenshots of financial transfers, emails, and flight bookings. "Russell is planning to leave the country," he said, showing her the screen. "And he's not planning to take you with him." Marlene's eyes widened as she scanned the information. This can't be right. We have the remortgage closing next week. We're supposed to be putting down a deposit on the condo." "The remortgage money was transferred to an offshore account yesterday," Garrett informed her. "Along with what was left of Leah's college fund. The money you told her was gone because of market downturns." "No." Marlene shook her head in denial. "Russell wouldn't. The same Russell who showed our daughter fake emails to turn her against me? The same Russell who's been sleeping with his assistant for the past year? That Russell wouldn't betray you." Garrett's voice dripped with sarcasm. Tears welled in Marlene's eyes. "How do I know you didn't fabricate all this?" In response, Garrett handed her a sealed envelope. "Bank records. Flight confirmation. Hotel reservations in Belize, single occupancy. The name of his lawyer who's been quietly liquidating assets. All independently verifiable." Marlene's hands trembled as she held the envelope without opening it. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked, her voice small. "Because despite everything, you're still Leah's mother." Garrett's expression remained impassive. "And because my quarrel was never just with you. It was with both of you, together, for what you did to my family. So this is your revenge? Showing me that Russell is betraying me too?" "No," Garrett said, standing. "My revenge would have been letting it happen without warning you. Watching you discover his betrayal only after he was gone with everything you had left." Marlene stared up at him, confusion written across her face. "I don't understand." "You have 24 hours, he told her. "The money can still be recovered if you act quickly enough. The legal documentation you'll need is in that envelope too. After that, it's beyond my concern." He turned to leave, but Marlene's voice stopped him. "Why?" she asked again. "After everything we did, why help me now?" Garrett looked back at her, his expression softening almost imperceptibly. "I'm not helping you, Marlene. I'm choosing not to destroy you. There's a difference. Because of Leah? Because I won't become what you and Russell tried to make me in her eyes." With that, He walked away, leaving Marlene clutching the envelope that contained both evidence of her second betrayal and the means to fight back against it. By the time Garrett returned home, Vincent had called with confirmation. Marlene had gone straight to her bank, then to her lawyer. The machinery Garrett had set in motion was operating perfectly, if not precisely as he'd originally designed. Leah was in the backyard with Abigail when he arrived, the two of them discussing photography techniques beside the koi pond. The sight made something tight in Garrett's chest loosen slightly. This, his daughter safe and engaged in her passion, was worth more than any revenge. How did it go? Abigail asked quietly when Leah went inside to get her camera. Russell's running, Garrett replied. I gave Marlene the evidence. Abigail raised an eyebrow. That wasn't the plan. Plans change. Marlene is still Leah's mother. And Russell? A cold smile flitted across Garrett's face. Russell will find that his escape route has certain complications. The kind that involve international banking regulations and flags on his passport. Later that evening, as Garrett and Leah shared dinner, his phone buzzed with a message from Marlene. Thank you. He didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. 3 days later, the story broke in local news. A prominent sales executive arrested for fraud and embezzlement while attempting to flee the country. Russell's name was splashed across headlines, his betrayal of both his company and his family detailed in humiliating specificity. In the aftermath, Leah spent more time with her mother, helping her pack up the apartment they could no longer afford. Marlene had found a teaching position at a community college and rented a small house closer to campus. It was a significant step down from the lifestyle she'd enjoyed during her marriage to Garrett, but there was a humility to her now that had been absent before. Mom's different, Leah commented one evening as she and Garrett sat on the back patio. Quieter. More honest, I think. People change when they have no choice, Garrett replied. Did you know Russell was stealing from her too? Garrett considered his answer carefully. I suspected Russell was capable of betraying anyone if it served his interests, including your mother. Leah nodded slowly. She said something strange yesterday. She said you could have destroyed both of them, but you chose to stop at Russell. Is that true? The truth is complicated, Leah. What matters is that both you and your mother can move forward now. Without forgiveness? She asked, watching him closely. Garrett met his daughter's gaze directly. Some things can't be forgiven, only survived. What your mother and Russell did to you, to us, falls into that category for me. But you didn't destroy Mom when you could have. No, he acknowledged. I didn't. Because you still love her? Leah's question was tentative, hopeful in the way only a child of divorce could be. Because I love you, Garrett corrected gently. And destroying your mother completely would have hurt you too. Leah absorbed this, then asked, and Russell? Do you regret what happened to him? Not for a second, Garrett replied with absolute certainty. He made his choices, knowing the risks. The consequences are his alone to bear. As the sun set over the garden, painting the sky in fierce oranges and reds, Garrett Reed felt a sense of closure that had eluded him for 3 years. Russell was facing criminal charges that would keep him imprisoned for at least a decade. Marlene was humbled but not destroyed, learning to live with the consequences of her choices. And Leah was here, bridging the gap between her parents while building her own identity separate from their conflicts. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't forgiveness. Garrett Reed was not a man who forgave betrayal, but it was justice of a sort. A reckoning that cleared the way for what mattered most. His relationship with his daughter, built on truth instead of lies. The box that had started it all sat on a shelf in Leah's room now. A reminder not just of what had been lost, but of what had been reclaimed. Truth, painfully won, but worth every battle. What happens now? Leah asked as darkness fell. Garrett placed his hand over hers, a gesture that would have been impossible months earlier. Now, he said, we start again.